you'll note that I have left the notes and that there are then 22 rows above my headers. So we're gonna mention this again right before we do our upload, but just note that I am paying attention that there are 22 rows above my header row. We're going to expand this again to be able to read these a little bit better, and you'll see I am on this particular one uploading to one company, but you can upload to multiple companies. Just group them. So I would have all of my webinar companies here, and then I would list all of my XYZ companies and all of my ABC company employees. That way the system has them grouped together and it knows where to map these people to. So you can do one upload file with all of your companies, all of the employees that you need 1095s for on one file and do one upload, and it will map them all to the proper company for you. Okay, I also have done one with the employee is here, and then his 3 dependents are listed here. I do have socials for them, so I entered them here. The system does allow for you to not know the dependent's social, which is not uncommon. So if that is the case, you would leave these blank, and we'll look when we get to almost the end of the spreadsheet, it will ask for dependent date of birth. That's a one or the other situation. So if you have the social, don't put the birth date in. If you do not have the social, you'll need the birth date. One of the 2 is required, but you don't want both because it will create an error. And then, so we're going to kind of scroll over here. So employee or employer EIN, the 2 social fields we've talked about, first and middle and last name. This is not commonly used, especially at the beginning. It's a corrected indicator, which would mark the form as corrected. Later on, if you're doing corrections, this could come into play, but typically not this time of year. Okay, so we're going to keep going. There is a foreign address indicator. Anything that says IND like this means indicator. If we look back, so this is going to say, this is a checkbox indicating this is a foreign address. So if we look back at our actual form, we're talking about the foreign address checkbox on the form that indicates right here, except it's highlighting everything, right here, it indicates that this is a foreign address. So the indicator is a checkbox, and 1 will check the box, and 0 or blank will not. And that is always explained for you above the header. So most of these are domestic addresses. In my example, I do have 1 foreign address to show that. So I've got my 1 in here for my foreign address. These are all domestic. So, street address, city, state, zip code is pretty self-explanatory. And then for my foreign address person, I have my foreign street address, city, province or state, postal code, and country code. The country code, if you're unsure of what the country code you should use is, that is also in the instructions. So if you go into the help, that should be there. If you have trouble or if you need any help with that, obviously, shoot us an email and we can guide you there because those are in the instructions. Okay, again, this is that new age field. This item is required for everyone. It is a 2-digit plan start month. You will notice that technically I only have 1 digit in here. That is because this is a CSV file and it will not allow for leading zeros. However, the system is programmed to know that this is a 2-digit month field and will add the leading 0 for you. So don't be concerned about leading zeros on socials or leading zeros on zip codes. Those will not display, but they will be added in upon upload. Okay, now we're going to start getting into our section about coverage codes. So again, looking back at our actual form, this is our part 2 with offer of coverage, the required contribution amounts, the safe harbor codes, and then this is the new for this year, the zip code field. If you're unsure about any, refer to the question marks. The big thing to remember with this section is if it was the same for all 12 months, you're going to fill out under the annual headers. If it was not the same for all 12 months, for example, this person entered in June, not in January. So their codes and their amounts changed throughout the year. So you are going to be filling out each individual month. The big thing to remember is you don't do both. If you fill out annual, it means it was the same all year, and you don't fill out each month. If you leave annual blank, meaning it was different throughout the year, then you would fill out each month, but you have to fill out all 12 with something. Hope that covers that. Okay, so with all 12 months listed, it's going to take us pretty far down this spreadsheet. Okay, so we finally got into December. The next field is covered individual indicator. This is another one of those 1, we'll check the box, and 2, we'll leave it blank sort of things. And what this is mapping to is, is this person going to be listed down here in this section? And it's going to be checking this box. So you want to make sure you're putting a 1 for anybody who was covered at any portion of the year and will need to be listed in Part 3. That's that. This is the dependent birthday I discussed before, which will only be filled out for dependents, not employees, just dependents, and only if they didn't have a social listed. So we had socials for Huey, Louie, and Dewey, so we left this blank. Okay, and we're going to move on. The headers on here, I apologize, are slightly confusing because it says dependent, but what it's really asking is dependent or covered individual, anybody who is covered. So same thing here. If these people were covered all year, annual indicator, we're going to put a 1 here. If you put a 1 here, it's going to check this box right here that says covered all 12 months. If you check that box, you'll notice these are grayed out now. So it's one or the other, right? You don't have 12 months and each month. So as that translates on the spreadsheet, you put a 1 in here for anyone who was covered, anyone, employee or dependent, who was covered all year. If they were not covered all year, you leave it blank or put a 0 and put your 1s in the months in which they were covered. Okay, so again, going through to December, this is taking us almost all the way to the end of our spreadsheet. The last 4 items are these state filing selectors that are showing up at the top of this form that are new this year. So this is for California, DC, New Jersey, or Rhode Island, and these are the ones that are requiring reporting. When we get to the batch part of this presentation, you'll see where this factors in a little more. Just keep in mind that this is optional and is really mostly intended for people who are not currently living in one of those 4 states, but may still require reporting to one of those 4 states due to a prior address. So this allows you to kind of pick and choose and fill out that information so that when you get to the batch, it's automatically included in that state reporting. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close out of here. I'm going to save and close this now that we're done with it, and I'm going to upload it. In order to do that, you're going to just click on this upload link in the upper right-hand corner. And this is, going to ask you for some information. First and foremost, we're going to go ahead and choose our file. Then this defaults to upload type of 1094. This is one of the most common things that goes on that trigger questions for us. you want to make sure you change that to 1095 because that is what we're uploading. And then this is why I made such a big deal about how many rows above headers. This is another one that is very common mistake that people make. So this is not asking you how many rows you have, and there is only the one row of headers in row 23 if you leave the notes. So we're going to put 22 in here because that's how many rows above the headers we have. If, for example, you were to remove all of the notes, including the note row above the headers, so that your headers are in row 1 and your first person is listed in row 2, you would put a 0 in here. All right, I always suggest you do overwrite unless you're actually trying to add additional people to people that you've previously uploaded or people that you have previously manually added. So I'm going to go ahead and check that, and I'm going to click Upload here. This is going to upload my file and produce a results screen. I don't have any errors for time constraints today, but if you were to have errors, they would be listed in this little grid at the bottom, and you do have the option to download the error results report into an Excel file so that you don't have to stay on this screen and be able to work through your errors and then re-upload your file overwriting it to make sure that everybody's in, nobody's duplicated, and everybody's correct. Okay. I have no errors, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK.